everyone. Welcome to the very first episode of Cries from the Caribbean. My name is Kimberley and I'll be your host. I live in Canada, but I'm an island girl all the way, through and through. I've started this podcast to tell stories of crime victims from the Caribbean because I know the pain of losing someone to violence in a country where it's supposed to be touristy, fun, and carefree. It's been over 10 years since my mom was killed, in a tourist space, to be more specific. And since then, I've earned a degree in criminology and slowly entered the world of true crime. Before university, I wasn't in the mental space to hear of other people's pain. Now, I want to share other people's stories, and this is my way of trying to give back to the world. Because despite my loss, so much has been given to me along my journey. I'd like to kick off this podcast with a story of a young man called Noah Hurst from Antigua, who tragically disappeared in May of 2023. And if you think you know everything about this case, think again, because some of what I'm about to tell you may not have ever been shared publicly. This is the aftermath of a disappearance no one saw coming. Antigua is 108 square miles of absolute beauty. Beautiful people, amazing local food, and 365 beaches, one for every day of the year. But on this very small island, there has been an increased number of disappearances, 100 people, as reported by the BBC in an article published in March of this year. That's an overwhelming number of disappearances, almost one for every square mile of this tiny island. The situation is so bad, a documentary was made in response to these tragic incidents, and it directly contrasts the idea of peaceful island living and the idea that nothing bad happens here. The evening of May 23rd, 2023 was exactly like that. Peaceful and quiet, just like every other evening for the Hurst family. Noah's mother, Maria, came home from a long day at work, took a shower, and completed her nightly routine. Her daughter and her husband were already home and sat on the couch while Noah stood near them, paying close attention to his phone. The family spent the rest of the night watching TV together before splitting off into their respective rooms. There was absolutely no indication that anything could ever go wrong. The next morning, Maria prepared breakfast, and although she would normally wake Noah for his shift, he wasn't scheduled to work that Wednesday, so she just went to work without disturbing him. But when she got home and there was no sight of Noah, Maria called his phone to see where he was. And when his phone went straight to voicemail, she assumed he was probably hanging out with his friends and would call her back later. When Thursday arrived and there was still no sign of Noah, or at least a call or text from him, Maria knew in her gut that something was very wrong. She called Noah's phone again and again, hoping that he would pick up, but no answer ever came. So after her shift, she went straight to the nearest police station, which was the All Saints police station, to officially report Noah missing. She told the officers it was unlike Noah to let calls and texts go unanswered, and that she was worried something had happened to him. According to Maria, the police officers told her that since he did not go missing from their parish, they would transfer the missing persons report to another police station, and that police station would reach out to her. Friday went by, And even though a missing persons report was filed, that did little to ease the worry that Maria felt. Because not only was there still no sign of her son, that promised call from the police station never came. To check up on the progress of things, Maria paid a visit to the station that she was supposed to hear from. But upon speaking to the officers, they told her they never received a missing persons report from the All Saints police station. Now, for those of you who are well seasoned in all things true crime, you would know that the first 48 hours of any missing persons case is the most crucial. So, in this situation, it wouldn't have been uncalled for to want the police to hit the ground running or pull out all the stops to locate her missing son. I think at this point, anyone, meaning myself, would have been mad, caused a scene, because of the time-sensitive nature of the situation. But Maria doesn't cause a scene. She, instead, gives her statement a second time to the officers, hoping that this would ignite a search for her son. I asked the detective on the case why there wasn't immediate action to transfer the missing persons report, and he did admit that it should have been transferred right away. This mistake cost the Hurst family and the investigators precious time, something that is, as I mentioned, super crucial in the early days of a missing persons case. The next day, there was about to be cause for deeper concern when Noah's sister makes an unsettling discovery. In Noah's room was his cell phone. It was there the entire time his family was trying to reach out to him. Maria later told me that Noah went nowhere without his phone. After finding the phone, the family turned it over to authorities with hopes that the police's technicians could unlock the phone. But after weeks pass and no communication from the station, the family finds out that the technicians could not unlock the phone. So, they went to the phone company that Noah was registered with and placed in a request to get his phone records released to them. After looking through the phone records, the family then handed them over to the police so they could investigate further. We'll get to what those records show in a bit, but some of you may now be wondering, how in the world did the family get to the records before the police did? The detective on the case mentioned that the Hurst family was only able to get call records, but that they, the police, needed more than just that. They needed to request a warrant to have things like location data, subscriber information, and even internet activity released to them in order to do their job more thoroughly. What isn't being spoken about in the media is that Noah had not one, but two phones. The phone registered with the family was what he left in his room, and the other one was presumably with him the night he went missing. When the police got the phone records back from the phone company, they discovered that Noah's second phone, so the phone he had with him, had pinged off a cell tower that was on All Saints Road, next to Robinson's gas station, in the very early hours of May 24th. Now, just to be clear, this doesn't mean he was at the gas station. This just means his phone was in that area. The detective never mentioned if law enforcement was in possession of that second phone or where it could have gone, so I can't speak any more about its significance other than the location shown by the phone records. It was noted that Noah made several calls to one friend that I'll call Warren to keep his real name out of the story. His last ever call was to Warren, and it lasted around 30 to 35 seconds. With this information in hand, police wasted no time in bringing Warren down to the station for questioning. Authorities have not revealed whether or not anything came of that questioning, but as of this recording, no charges were laid with regards to Noah's case. Interestingly enough, and something that we need to be talking about more, is that Warren was later arrested on unrelated charges involving the possession of unregistered firearms, and he is sitting in prison at the time of this recording. So, to that young man and those in his friend circle, I say come clean with whatever information you may have about Noah. As you sit in prison, reflect on what his family is feeling, because you may have the answers they want to know. I'm not saying you did anything, but you may have seen or heard something. You were supposedly his friend. His last ever call was to you. Around 4 weeks after Noah's disappearance, Maria and her church friend were chatting when her friend got a notification that the police discovered human remains at Diamond Estate. And at the time, Maria paid attention to it, but never really thought it could have been her son. 2 weeks after the discovery, the police contacted the Hurst family and asked them to come down to the station to see if they could recognize any items that were found at Diamond Estate. Upon seeing the clothes, shoes, and even bits of scalp and braided hair, Maria knew it was her son. She said, and I quote, "They showed me some clothing. I know this is my son's clothes. I am 90 to 95% sure because I know his clothing. The braided hair as well. I saw that. My son has long, thick hair, and I am the one who braided his hair, so I recognize that as well." End quote. The police and the pathologists could not identify a cause of death due to the remains being in a severe state of decomposition, but they decided to send the remains off to another Caribbean island to confirm they were at least Noah's. Antigua doesn't have the equipment yet to test DNA, so they couldn't do it on the island. Almost a year passed and there was no notification from the police on where things stood with the DNA results. According to Maria, the police told her that things were progressing slowly due to a lack of funding. So on the advice of the detective on the case, the family took matters into their own hands and met with the police commissioner to apply more pressure. And it worked, because the DNA results came back on the anniversary of Noah's disappearance. It confirmed what Maria and her family knew all along. The remains found at Diamond Estate were indeed that of Noah Hurst. After a positive ID, the remains were released to the family, and they held a very private ceremony for their beloved son on July 28th, 2024. When researching this case, I spoke directly with Maria, and I could hear the weariness in her voice, the sadness, but I also heard the resilience, the strength, and the displeasure with how the police handled her case. She has been noted in several sources to say, and I quote, "From the beginning, I have been going to them, and they treat the situation like I made a report that cucumbers were stolen from my yard. They treat the matter as if it wasn't a human being that is missing." End quote. Maria did not fail to remind me, though, that her strength came from God. She said she cried every day for an entire year, but she never lost her faith in God and still believes justice will prevail, whether in this life or the next. I asked the detective on the case what he thought happened, and he kept his cards close to his chest as this is still an active investigation. However, he did say he believed foul play was involved in Noah's disappearance. They have persons of interest, but no witnesses, and he mentioned that the police did everything they could with what little information they had. With the rising number of disappearances, the Royal Police Force of Antigua has been working on putting together a task force that will specifically handle the cases of these missing individuals. I came across a quote from the Island Press Box that states, "The creation of a specialist task force is commendable and represents a chance at long overdue justice for the families of the missing. But solving these cases will require more than just a unit. It will take genuine commitment, better investigative tools, and most importantly, a justice system that refuses to let these cases go cold." End quote. From my own experiences with detectives in Antigua, they have a policy that states no case is ever considered cold. No matter how unsolvable it may seem, and this always gives me hope. As far as what I've gathered from Noah's case, there have been no arrests, no information as to how he died, and not many leads. So I'd like to take a second to point out where the Diamond Estate is located with respect to where Noah's phone was pinged on All Saints Road. The Google Maps image is on my Instagram page if you'd like a visual. I'd like my Antiguan listeners to maybe try to think back on where you might have been that morning, or if you saw anything suspicious in the days after May 24th. There are a few establishments that might have been opened at the time, including a local nightclub in the area. Someone dumped Noah's body there at that estate. Somewhere on that map, Noah was killed, and someone knows something. People talk. So this is where you all come in. The quote from the Royal Police Force is mostly correct, in that better investigative tools and commitment is needed, but it is missing something that is crucial to most investigations, and that is civilian cooperation. It really does take a village to solve cases like these, and it's so imperative that people come forward with information. Police can do all the investigative steps and act as soon as they possibly can. But if silence prevails, convictions will not happen. If you or anyone you know may have seen anything at all in the very early morning of May 24th, reach out to your local police. Or if you want to remain completely anonymous, contact Crime Stoppers at 268-800-8477 or visit their website, which I've posted in the show notes. No piece of information is too small. Noah was a quiet 24-year-old man who worked at Veg International. But before all that, he used to regularly attend church, the Central Baptist Church, with his family. He actually went to the school connected to the church, and it was one of the best schools on the island of Antigua. His family made sure he was loved and cared for both spiritually, educationally, and physically while he was alive. Noah was a human being, just like you, just like me. A friend, a brother, and a beloved son. Help get his family the justice they deserve. Thank you for listening to my very first episode. Please share with your friends and family, and a huge shout out to those of you listening from Antigua. If you want me to cover a specific case, you can email me. My email is in the show notes. If you have any feedback, comment, or DM me on Insta or Facebook, I'll be really grateful for it. I'm always looking for ways to improve and learn. I hope to see you next time with a story that will hail from the birthplace of reggae music, the island of Jamaica. Continue listening for the very first Safety Moment segment of the week. This is something I plan to do after every episode, and I hope that it helps someone out there stay safe. guys, I'd just like to put this out there since we now know that anyone, and I mean anyone, could go missing. As some of you know, I follow Crime Junkie. Heck, I am a crime junkie. And Ashley Flowers and Britt Praywat created a very useful tool called an If I Go Missing folder. In the story that was just told, there was a struggle to unlock Noah's phone and get into his social media. With an If I Go Missing folder, you can input all this information and store it in a location that only you and perhaps a most trusted person knows about. I would really recommend my fellow island folk to fill out this folder so that in the event you or anyone you know goes missing, knock on wood, the police can access vital information to support their crucial searches in the first 24 hours. I have a link to the folder in my bio. Once you fill it out, let someone know you have it, just so they are aware of its existence. I have one, and I know a lot of crime junkies out there have one too. It can be life-saving in the event you need it. And as my parents used to say to me all the time, it is better to be safe than sorry. So stay safe.